Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today we're going to be doing a day one overview of the They Shall Not Pass DLC. If you have the DLC, I'll talk about things you need to know. If you're thinking about getting the DLC, I'll talk about some of the pros and cons of the DLC so far. And if you haven't been keeping up with my CTE videos that have already showed off about 90% of this content, let me quickly list off some of the new things you get in Battlefield 1's first DLC. We have 4 new maps, 2 new operations, the French army, which includes new skins and voice acting and stuff like that. 1 new elite class, which is the Trench Raider, who can one-shot melee and heal himself. We have a new assault tank. We have the new Char 2C super heavy tank that acts as a Behemoth on 2 of the new maps. There's 6 new primary weapons, although technically one of them is a new pistol for like the tanker class or the pilot class, so most people probably won't be using that. As for the basic weapons for the primary classes in the game, there's about 5 new weapons that you're likely going to use. There's 4 new melee weapons, though they don't really bring much in the way of tactics to the field, just aesthetic differences. There's 1 new game mode called Frontlines, and then there's also 3 new melee weapons that can be unlocked through the puzzle piece system. Now, along with the DLC also came a pretty big patch that's going to affect everybody regardless of whether or not you have the DLC. When it comes to buying things with battle packs, there's actually a new exchange feature right now. I had 3 skins available for purchase, and you can buy them with scraps now instead of having to just unlock them randomly through battle packs. It's a nice little update. It certainly doesn't give you the ability to pick and choose whatever skin you want, but if this rotates out frequently, it should give a lot of players the ability to get some legendary skins without having to get incredibly lucky. When it comes to game balance, there's actually quite a few significant changes to the way that weapons perform, but one thing you should absolutely be aware of is the new way that grenades function. Now you don't have to resupply them at ammo crates, but they will auto resupply at 36 seconds for basically most of the primary grenades you run with. So if you throw your grenade, you can wait about half a minute and you'll have a new grenade. You're not reliant on the support class. And I know what you guys are thinking, like, finally, DICE, they gave us more grenades. The one thing we were asking for. Can we please just get auto-replenishing grenades in this game? Because if there's one thing that doesn't happen enough, it's grenade kills. Right? Okay, if you're not catching on to my sarcasm there, it's because the CTE community and generally the overall Battlefield community, when they saw this change in CTE, was like, hey, this is bad, let's not do it. And then DICE did it. So I'm not really sure why it's in the game, but there's going to be probably more grenades now. That being said, they have reduced the detonation timer on the frag grenade, which I'd been complaining about for a while. They didn't reduce it as much as I would like. It used to be 0.7 seconds, now it's 1 second. So that's the 300 millisecond increase in detonation timer. I think they could have gone all the way up to 1.5 seconds to make it more practical. If you think it's going to be harder to get grenade kills, though, it's not really going to be that much harder. I've already gotten plenty since the new patch. Gas grenades, smoke grenades, and mini grenades have all had their grenade counts reduced down to 1. This means the amount of gas spam you see in the game should be reduced significantly, which is actually going to be a very big change to the game overall. I'm not really sure why DICE reduced the quantity of smoke grenades you can have, because in my experience they've already been underutilized, so keeping them at 2 would probably have been better. Hell, increasing them to 3 might have been made them a more viable grenade option, but for whatever reason those are now 1. Now, out of the hundreds of weapon changes being made, I think the most important one to know about is the overall improvement to self-loading rifles. Those are the medic rifles in the game. They should now fire more accurately, their spread should increase at a slower rate, and their recoil should, for the most part, be more manageable, especially if you're using, say, sniper variants or the marksman or optical variants. They should be a lot better. I haven't tested them out extensively. I want to really give them some time and potentially do a whole video just focusing on the new and improved medic rifles. So if you're somebody who's been avoiding the medic class because you don't like the way their guns feel, you might want to come back to them and give them another try. And if you've already been using the medic class, well, you're in for a treat. Now, as for some of the new DLC content that I haven't yet covered on my channel, this is the new Verdun Heights map. It's an infantry only map. It features a large hillside, a little bit of a canyon, and then another hillside on the other side. There's lots of fire. The visuals are very cool, and the map is fun. There's a good amount of infantry cover. It's really good for moving around on tactically, and the new Frontlines game mode is also pretty fun. I've had some very long versions of it, as it can go back and forth forth as sort of a tug-of-war style game mode, but it allows you to alternate quickly between attacking and defending objectives, and I like it a lot. It could easily be a staple game mode for Battlefield. Sadly, I think it's probably going to be unplayable in another month or two, as that seems to happen with DICE DLCs. Since the maps and game modes are behind a paywall, it tends to split the community, and ultimately people just end up searching for the primary game modes because it takes too long to find some of the special DLC game modes. We'll have to wait and see a couple months down the road, but this has been historically what happens with all Battlefield DLC, and DICE is not approaching it in a different manner this time around, so I don't see why it would happen any differently. So basically, if you have the DLC and you're enjoying the new game mode, get your time in now while it is still playable and easy to find a match. Now for me personally, some of the primary features of this DLC that I'm most excited about were the new weapons, and there's some real winners in there. The Shosha LMG is probably one of my favorite guns from the CTE. Unfortunately, when I unlocked it here, the aiming down sight sensitivity was way off and I wasn't able to fix it. So the gun is kind of unusable for me, and I don't know if this is just a bug or something left over from some random code or something like that, but I hope DICE fixes that soon. As for the game modes though, I was most excited about playing Operations. Now DICE has talked about implementing a new Operations server browser, but that's not in the game yet, and right now it's almost impossible to get into a freaking game of Operations. I got into one once that was already over halfway done. It was on the second map, and I got a little bit of a taste of it, but otherwise 90% of the time I'm matchmaking into a completely empty Operations server, or maybe there'll be like 3 people in there and we'll stay and try and fill it up, and people will just come and leave and it'll never get going. So Operations, at least on day one for me, in the middle of the day has been unplayable. It's really unfortunate. DICE has a horrible matchmaking system for it. The community was telling them this since day one of Battlefield, and they basically argued against us and said, no, we really want to try something else with Operations. Then they finally conceded and said, okay, we're going to put in a server browser, and 6 months later we still don't fucking have it. So I can't play the new Operations game modes on day one. Maybe it'll become more playable when there's a even higher peak player count, but still there's tons of people playing the new Frontlines game mode and Conquest, and I can get into those just fine because there's a server browser and I can queue up for it. Operations though is a no-go. I'm not gonna keep matchmaking into empty servers hoping that one day I'll get into a full Operations game that's probably gonna end up being halfway through already. Now, as far as the overall quality and content amount in this DLC, I'd say it's pretty good. It's not overwhelming. The new weapons are decent, at least some of them are decent and fun to use. I found the map design in general to be pretty good, although I'm not crazy about Soissons, as it's just very open, very vehicle oriented, but if you're super into tanking, then it might be a perfect map for you. The one downside that I can see people not being as excited about this DLC is that thematically it doesn't really offer anything super cool. I mean, it does have the French faction, but in terms of like maps and environments, we're fighting in a lot of the same areas, or areas look the same as they do in the base game, whereas the Russian DLC is going to have snowy maps, and then we're going to have a DLC that's focused around more naval warfare. You know, those DLCs have significant theme change-ups, where this one doesn't as much, and I can understand why people might not get quite as excited about this one. The new Behemoth, on the other hand, is extremely cool. The Char 2C super heavy tank is just a total badass behemoth. It actually requires some skill to use. It's not just an easy win factor or something that's incredibly easy to counter, like say the airship now. So there's actually a decent amount of content in this DLC. I like the guns, I like the new Behemoth, I like most of the maps, and it's all generally speaking pretty high production quality. I think the main thing holding this DLC back is still the implementation, the packaging around it. The lack of Operations and server browser is a huge hit to my ability to play my favorite game mode on the new maps, as I haven't really been able to experience it yet. And then in addition to that, like, the progression system is really still lacking. Nothing new seemed to come about in this patch. They sort of made a few small changes to like the battle packs and using an exchange feature for a few skins, but it's a very minor change. And also with the new Elite Codices system, You'd expect the new elite codices to come with the new weapons. Well, they didn't. So the slow moving updates to the core features of this game, the progression system, the server browser, I think are hindering the new DLC content. And that's unfortunate because I think the DLC overall is pretty decent. I think the Russian DLC looks like it's going to be a lot cooler than this one. But the fact that my overall enjoyment of this DLC is being hindered by the slow progression of the base game features is really unfortunate. So overall, I'm happy that there's new content in the game. Being able to bring the new DLC weapons back into the vanilla version of Battlefield is going to be exciting for me, but also not being able to experience the DLC fully, at least without spending tons and tons of time trying to matchmake for operations, is disappointing for me. I'll keep you guys updated on new stuff that comes about with this DLC. There's plenty of other things to talk about with this patch, so stay tuned for those videos. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.